These ones. Let's go.
Stand up and face the east. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the mother of the universe.
Allah, the mother of the universe.
Mother of love.
Mother of love.
Truth. Peace. Freedom. And justice. Allah is my protector.
Allah is my protector.
My guide. And my salvation. By night. And by day. Through his holy prophet. Noble Jali.
Islam. Give thanks, Mons. Prophet warns all Muslims, governors ordered to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work, in their home, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Ali. Islam. To be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam. I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Ali. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. This is the instruction from your Prophet Noble Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on. But the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I Noble Ali. And that's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, lest they will be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but would sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah would bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Ali. Islam. Peace, Moors. So we're here for our out of the temple session. We have barbecue date coming up for July. We're working on a trip to New Brunswick to go see some Moors on the reserve out there. It's probably going to be a 4-day trip or something like that. And also we have the In the Park series going to be starting up soon, going to the different parks as we usually do every summer, just to be outside and getting our sun rays while we taking this info. We want to welcome anybody who's new here. Just for, if you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to put your questions up once you have those. What we're going to be going through today, we're going back to the message of Aquaria, the significance and mission of the Aquarian age. And there was a chapter in here dealing with faith and works. And part of that too is what we're supposed to be about, as far as not just trusting in what this is, but actually putting in the work so that this could be something. What makes what we're doing what it is the work that we put into it. That's going to make it be what it is. We had one of the brothers here had some interactions with some of our people with the package selling and stuff like that. So a lot of information wasn't presented to him upon him going through the process, and a lot of it is the idea that the paper or the card or whatever is what's going to get you out of what you're in, when it's really not about the paper or the card. It's really about the mindset of the individual, which again goes back to the works part, because you could only be what you know. You can't be what you don't have knowledge of. So if we're saying that we're Moors and then we have a card or a paper, but our mindset doesn't match the card or the paper, eventually we're going to run into issues. You might be able to show the paper for a few times and get a favorable response, but you're eventually going to bump into that individual who wants to know, do you really know what you're talking about, or are you just relying on this instrument? And then if you're just relying on the instrument only, you're setting yourself up, because you shouldn't even have the instrument yet. And the people who are presenting it should be presenting it like that. Well, this is really about having the knowledge. And then once you have the knowledge, then you start saying, okay, I'm going to get papers or whatever, which is why with our temple, we have a year, call it, I don't know what you call it, probation, if you will, that you have to get to a certain level before we even start saying, here's card, here's papers, or whatever the case is. All right, so this is the faith and works chapter, and then we're gonna relay that to chapters in the Quran as well. So it starts with a couple scripture verses. St. Matthew, the 7th. Ye shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? James the 2nd. What doth it profit, my brethren, though a man say he has faith and have not works? Can faith save him? Even so faith, if it hath not works, is dead being alone. One of the things we want to go into as well is the administration's functions book, which is dealing with the um, the work that every individual should be putting in to the Moorish movement. It's not just the leadership job; it's also the membership's duty. Even when you look at it from other nations' perspective, other nations work tirelessly to give back to their nation. If we go to, we use the reference of the different food spots, different restaurants or whatever, right? The Italians, the Asians, the Hindustanis or whatever, they only have their stuff and they're catering to their people, right? Um, we use the example of the Jollibee chicken people, the Filipinos, that's their stuff. They're not going to Kentucky and all that stuff. They're going to their chicken, their fried chicken spot or whatever, right? So it's about supporting the nation. So this is just the introduction to the administrative functions. Administrate and administration relates to the operative charge, the moral direction, and the ethical management of government. In law, the act of administration or the function of an administrator is to mete out or to act out as an executive or trustee for an organization, an association, or a body politic. So um, we found a Moor out there that his slogan is that he's the trustee of Noble Juali, right? Um, like we're saying here, the trustee for an organization or a body politic, right? The trustee works on behalf of the people. The trustee doesn't work for profit 100 years ago. The trustee works for the people who are here right now that could give the trustee orders of what they want the trustee to do, right? In the instance of with what you're dealing with them giving you the paperwork and whatever and identification and all that. The fact that they charge you for it, they're not doing trustee duties, right? They're providing services. So if they're providing a service, then they can't provide a service and be a trustee because the trustee is doing it because it's the obligation of the trustee to do it, right? Like we were talking with the signature, signing one individual signing two different places, that disqualifies the document. And that's not just with Moors. That's you talk to anybody, right? If you have a witness, then that's what a witness is. If you have a whatever the title is, pastor, preacher, whatever like that, that's a whole separate signature that has to be on there, right? Thus, administrative pertains to administration and executive functions. Executive relates to or is adaptive to the putting into practical effect the plans for projects, for business, for civic relations, for social progress, and for programs, etc. A trustee is one who holds property in trust, being a body of men or women who hold property or responsibilities to manage the affairs of an organization or foundation, etc. Function is the specific, the natural, or the proper action of activity of anything. It relates to the special duties, responsibilities, or actions required of anyone who holds an office, who has an occupation, or who is in a particular position to play a role in the operations, the quality, or the performance of such a duty. Administrative functions shall serve as a fundamental instructional instrument or a tool for instituting basic and elemental operations of government order. It is necessary that Moorish Americans, and particularly those who hold positions of authority in the Moorish science temples and the Moorish temples of science, to be at all times cognizant of their moral and ethical responsibilities to the Moorish nation and the people at large. So the moral and ethic responsibility wouldn't be to say 5,000 for papers, or wouldn't be to say, here's this card, now go out and go be a Moor. Because them doing that, they know that you're gonna get injured, right? That's immoral to go that route with somebody knowing that they lack knowledge. Like Brother Noah was saying, the example of the firearm, and then just give anybody a firearm because they see other people shooting and they don't even know what a bullet is, right? The individuals who hold the office, or the people who take the position of saying they're in charge, the people have to hold them to the standard that they're going to be ethical and be moral in their actions. Going back to the thing with faith and works, that what they presented to you was faith with no works. Because if you go check their track record, I guarantee you that they haven't used those papers that they're selling, but they're selling them. You know what I mean? And we like we were saying when we were talking on the phone, that we're looking at about 80 grand they probably got over the time frame of them doing this thing of saying, we're whatever. You have an issue, you can come to us, and then we'll help you get out of whatever the issue is, mortgage, car issues, whatever, right? Those are things that they're supposed to be training you to get out of those things, not them doing it for you. As soon as they start doing it for you, and then there's prices on it and all that, as soon as they say, well, phone call comes in. Amor gave an example of this one. Somebody, he reached out to somebody, they called him, right? I need some assistance with whatever. They called him. He got on the phone for about an hour and a half. And at the hour and a half, who called him stopped the time and said, that's going to be 400, without even saying that pre the conversation, right? That it's 400 because because of the lack of knowledge of the individual, they gave the 400 up. Just because this individual said pay 400 and it's a consultation, when we're gonna go to the lessons, and we have covenant for ourselves, right? Now when Moors have this opportunist perspective where they can rape other Moors financially just because they had a phone call with them, or they jumped in their car and they dropped them over there and they told them, well, you need to give me $100 gas or whatever like that, right? That goes against things that Noble Drew Ali presented for us. So one of the things Drew Ali brought to us was a covenant for ourselves, so that we can know how to deal with each other. Because when we look at how everybody else deals with us, it's pretty messed up how we get dealt with by other people. And then we look at ourselves, and then we're treating ourselves worse than other people would be treating us, right? So the covenant, the holy covenant of the Asiatic nation: ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother hath given you suck. Let the bonds of affection therefore unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brother is in adversity, assist him. If thy sister is in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race, and his care be continued to you all in your love to each other. So when we look up covenant, That's a agreement. That's a contract that we're going into as brothers and sisters. That if my brother's in adversity, I'm going to assist him. It's not going to be 300, 500, 800, 2 grand, 5 grand, whatever. It's going to be, that's my brother, assist them. The same way that how we're dealing with the things now, right? Going back to the thing of the trustee, it should have been them that you were calling, like not you sitting here with us. You should have been sitting at their office and them breaking down to you how the paperwork works, what you do, who you send it to, if you got court on whatever day, which ones you're supposed to send, what other supporting documents should go with that, so that you can be well rounded when you go there, instead of you going in there just on these things that they sold you, that you can't really use it like that because they sold it to you, which means that it doesn't have anything to do with nationality. It doesn't have anything to do with birthrights. It doesn't have to do with we're indigenous or the UN declarations or rights or anything like that. They just sold a package, right? Which pretty much wipes out everything, makes everything that they set up actually useless and not being able to use, right? On the moral ethical part of it, because there's a track record of these individuals doing this type of stuff, right? That's where the violations ethically happen, where the paperwork might not work. But in the sense of principle, the master teacher on Taj Street Bay used to use the example of, you could have your nationality card on piece, you use toilet paper, and it's going to be just as effective as somebody with something with a seal on it and whatever like that, because it's a right that nobody can take and nobody can violate, even though they do it, right? But the idea of you having those doesn't necessarily mean that when you go to put them out there, they're not going to work, right? They might work because of you being a sincere individual, not the papers. So the energy that you're going out there with the papers with is what's going to make it work or not work, right? Not what's on the paper, or the paper says this, or it has a gold seal or a red seal or orange seal. That means it's qualified. The real qualification of it comes from the individual who has it. So you would have it even though you bought it, and your energy might make it work. But we're saying, because of the karmic debt of certain people's actions pre you getting those papers, there might be stuff attached to those that you don't even know what it is. There could be, it's just like we use the thing of the firearm, and then you just go buy something off the street instead of a store, and then it has 10 bodies on it, and then now you got caught with it. Now you got 10 bodies to deal with, right? Look at that the same way. How much people did they play using that same stuff? And then how many people said, okay, well, I'm going to use this, and then they went and used it, and then it didn't work. But then those people aren't going to talk about it because of their issues, so they're not going to talk about it, out of embarrassment or whatever like that. And then the individuals who sold it to them aren't going to tell them, because the people who used it and got messed up probably didn't even contact them to say that, yo, this stuff doesn't even work or whatever like that, right? So there could be things attached to it that you don't know about, that could get you in issues that are going to come up just because of energy, because this is something that has to do with a spiritual side of it, and it has to do with a mundane or a physical side of it. And the spiritual side of it is way more important than the mundane stuff, right? Any questions or comments before we go on? It is necessary that Moorish Americans, and particularly those who hold positions of authority in the Moorish temples of science, to be at all times cognizant of their moral and ethical responsibilities to the Moorish nation and to the people at large. They must be upright and just in their actions and activities in the matters of governance of the Moorish nation, or with any group of Moors. It is the solemn duty the obligation and the honor of all Moorish Americans to reinstitute those high cultured principles of our ancient mothers and fathers, being love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. For we are striving to uplift fallen humanity. So the duty is really to uplift our people. It's not to take finance from them for stuff that you shouldn't be taking finance for. It's about making sure that our people are getting from that low vibratory state to a higher vibratory state. We're either going to do that through information, through inspiration, through experience, however it happens. But it has to be done with the principles being adhered to at all times. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice are the principles that we supposed to be going by as humanity. Because we're not going by those principles, this is why stuff is crazy right now. So if we go with the first principle, they violated that with you. Because if they have the Holy Covenant, then out of love, they should have just dealt with you as a brother. Or you're in a situation with, whatever, taxes. Well, go here. You can do all the paperwork. You can do the research, whatever like that. Find yourself. If you have questions, check me after. Right? Truth. The fact that they didn't tell you about us, and that this exists, and they made it as if they're the man. They're the ones that you should be going to for whatever, is fraudulent, right? That's a lie. The fact that they're selling you the paperwork that we gave them for free 10 years ago, right? All the stuff that they got, that whole package, is everything they got came from what we use or have used. And then they just change the letterhead, put their own little whatever on it, put their little seal on it, and then now it's theirs. It doesn't really work like that. That's a lie, right? And once you go through all the principles, you'll see where they violated. The only place where they didn't violate is justice, because we're still waiting for that principle to be instituted on them, because we're not going to be the ones to do it. They're going to do whatever they're going to do. Most we can do is put out the right side of what this is. But the compensation that they get for the fraudulent activity that they've been doing over the years, like we're saying, that they got about 70 grand from people, could be more than that now, because that's based on the ones who we talk to. We're not even talking about the people who we don't know, who paid 3 to 10 grand for papers, right? Allah's going to deal with them. The higher forces, the ancestors or whatever, is going to deal with them. It might not be on this plane. They might be able to get away and have the Beamer and the Benz and the whatever like that, and have everything else and all the fancy whatever, because that's what they do, and live a great life on the earth plane. But after they leave here, they're going to have to deal with some stuff because of the lack of morality that they used in dealing with their own people. All right. We must therefore be true to the humanitarian cause of the Moorish movement and approach our relationship with others with justice and fair dealing. Those in leadership and authoritative positions must act with honesty, integrity, and prudence, and know that the nation's offices held by them are not for their own selfish gain, nor for arbitration, nor for arbitrary or vanity, but are by right the providence of the people. Holy Quran, Circle 7, chapters 29 and 30. So we'll go to those ones. Chapter 29 and chapter 30. Magistrate and subject, and holy instructions from the Prophet, social duties. So when we read magistrate and subject, keep that in mind with any Moors or anybody in any type of leadership position that you're dealing with, regardless of what. If you're talking about the CEO of whatever, because you had some type of arrangement with them or engagement with them. If you're talking about religious, if you're talking about educational, whatever the leadership, this is how the relationship's supposed to be between the leadership and the people who are being led. All right, Magistrate and Subject, chapter 29. O thou, the favorite of heaven, whom the Son of Men, thy equals, have agreed to raise to sovereign power, and set as a ruler over themselves, consider the ends and importance of their trust far more than the dignity and height of thy station. Right? So look at the people who have the power. Look at the individuals who have the power, and the seat that they hold, not higher. Don't look at them as greater because they hold this seat. It's the people who put them there that are the important people. The worthy people are the ones who actually said, you know what, we choose you to be the individual to handle our affairs, right? Because that means that they're putting trust in that individual. So again, going back to the thing, the seat of power that they're holding is the office of a lawyer. That's the seat of power that they use with the people who are less knowledgeable. Because in our people's mind, people who are lawyers, they know the law. So the ignorant are going to see anybody who says law or lawyer or whatever, they're going to look at them as, oh yeah, they must be somebody because they're a lawyer, right? Thou art clothed in purple and seated on a throne. The crown of majesty investeth thy temples. The scepter of power is placed in thy hand. But not for thyself were these ensigns given, not meant for thine own, but for the good of thy kingdom. Right? Going back to that theme again, that the people who are in the positions of power, they have the power so they can be a slave to the people. And as soon as they start playing some authoritative role and they don't got to hear what the people are saying, or they don't need to take orders or whatever from the people, you already know it's time to drag those people off the stage and put somebody else up there, because their pattern is violate you, right? When you look at politicians today, right now, that's what they do. Violate the people. The people go vote for them, and then when situations come up, people can't even get a hold of these people, right? And we have that happening right now, trying to contact them, and we didn't vote for them, and we can't reach them. The people who even voted for them can't reach them, right? Going back to the thing of they're taking the dignity and height of their station higher than the people who put them there. The glory of a king is the welfare of his people. His power and dominion rest on the hearts of his subjects. The mind of a great prince is exalted with the grandeur of his situation. He revolteth high things, and searcheth for business worthy of his power. He calleth together the wise men of his kingdom. He consulteth among them with freedom, and heareth the opinion of them all. He looketh among his people with discernment. He discovereth the abilities of men, and employeth them according to their merits. His magistrates are just, his ministers are wise, and the favorite of his bosom deceiveth him not. He smileth in the arts, and they flourish in the sciences, improve beneath the culture of his hand. With the learned and the ingenious he delighteth himself. He kindleth in their breasts emulation, and the history of his kingdom is exalted by their labors. The spirit of the merchant who extendeth his commerce the skill of the farmer who enriches his lands, the ingenuity of the artist, the improvements of the scholar, all these honoreth with his favor, or rewardeth with his bounty. So that goes to the thing of everybody has their duty. Everybody has their position, everybody has their job. In the spirit of the merchant who exalteth his commerce, the skill of the farmer, the ingenuity of the artist. All these things are the works that the individual is doing, right? Whatever works, whatever it is that the higher force sent you here to do, that's what your work is supposed to be. And in you doing that work and taking it from the perspective of you're doing this for your nation, it's going to manifest into something. The only reason the stuff doesn't manifest with us is because we're never doing it for our nation. We have an example that we use of everybody wants to have the fruits, but the tree can't grow past a sapling because everybody's sucking off of the sapling. Everybody's pulling off the leaves to do stuff with leaves or whatever like that. But then you want fruit instead of allowing the tree or the movement or the nation or whatever to mature, and every individual doing their part. You're gonna have the individual who's gonna till the soil. You got the individual who's gonna come every day and they're gonna hug the tree and make sure it feels loved and whatever, and wipe the leaves down or whatever the case is, right? You have the ones who are gonna tend to the grounds around the tree. You have ones who are they're never gonna see the tree, but they're doing something relative to that thing being able to manifest into something that the people can say, yes, we have something to call ours, right? He planteth new colonies. He buildeth strong ships. He openeth rivers for convenience. He formeth harbors for safety. His people abound in riches, and the strength of his kingdom increaseth. He frameth his statutes with equity and wisdom. His statutes with equity and wisdom. His subjects enjoy the fruits of their labor in security, and their happiness consists in the observance of the law. He foundeth his judgments on the principles of mercy, but in the punishment of offenders he is strict and impartial. His ears are open to the complaints of his subjects. He restraineth the hands of their oppressors, and he delivereth them from their tyranny. Right? Going back again to these individuals. Oh yeah, go ahead. And if anybody else had anything, feel free to put those out.
I was just going to say that this chapter is basically what government should be here. What we've noticed is that the beginning part of government, where the kingdom is supposed to be feeding, that's not happening. The tyrannical part is happening to us. And the part where we're supposed to get some redress from the government is not happening to us. So what they've taken is they've taken this document, taken everything good for themselves, and then left us with all of the bad stuff. So to me, this is a very important document to sort of be able to hold up to what our government is doing. Is our government feeding us? Is our government helping us? When we go to talk with the government, are they responding to us and listening to us? No, they're not. Are the people that you're going to talk to, are they responding to you? You know what I'm saying? In these levels, are they helping you? Or does it seem that once the finance is given, then they're gone, right? So anyways, I use this as that template. I yield.
As well. Any other comments? More? His people, therefore, look up to him as a father with reverence and love. They consider him as the guardian of all they enjoy. Their affection unto him begetteth in his breast a love of the public. The security of their happiness is the object of his care. No murmurs against him arise in their hearts. The machinations of his enemies endanger not the state. His subjects are faithful and firm in his cause. They stand in his defense as well as a wall of brass. The array of a tyrant fleeth before him, as shaft before the wind. Security and peace bless the dwelling of his people, and glory and strength encircle his throne forever. Right? And again, that's magistrate and subject. So really it's the subject that has the power. The subject is the one with the power. And the subject takes that power and gives it to the leadership. And the leadership's supposed to be doing something with the power relative to the benefit of the public. If the public's not benefiting, like what you're dealing with, then obviously they're not competent leadership. And if they're not competent leadership, then it's time to remove them from office. And we realize that, you know, the removing them from office with what it is that we're involved in is letting people know about their activities so that others don't fall victim to this thing that's happening. Because, you know, there's we were talking about this yesterday on a live that I did yesterday, that you know, people are looking at the righteous people defending the righteous people defending the people against the unrighteous, as there's issues between relative frequency beings, right? When it's really higher self versus lower self. It's really the subjects against the master. The subjects realizing that they're taken advantage of and wanting to stop the problem. In this day and time, you know, we wouldn't suggest going up and doing something to these people when they do stuff like $5,000 for papers or whatever, because we know they're going to snitch. We know the first thing they're going to do is go call highwaymen or whatever because you kicked their ass or whatever for stealing finance from them, right? And then because majority of the people are in some type of issue with the so-called law people, they can't go call them because now it's bringing attention to themselves. As soon as they say, well, let me see an ID and it's some type of immigration issue. Now, I can't give my ID to them people or whatever like that. So now you're stuck having to just deal with it, you know, and we say, opposed to just dealing with it, you know, use whatever it is that they gave you and expose the we'll say unlawful activity that they've got you twisted up in. That if they would have just did the honorable thing, oh, you want to know about Mars? Oh, first thing you need to do, go to the temple, go down to Eglinton or whatever like that, and go see those Moors over there. That's the first thing. After you go there, then you come see us. But then if they do that, then you're going to come here and get everything that they were going to give you for nothing. Right? Chapter 30. Holy instructions from the prophet, the social duties. When thou considerest thy wants, when thou beholdest thy imperfections, acknowledge his goodness, O son of humanity, who honored thee with humanity, endued thee with speech, and placed thee in society, to receive and confer reciprocal helps and mutual obligations, protection from the injuries, thy enjoyments of the comforts of the pleasure of life. All these thou owest to the assistance of others, and could not enjoy but in the bands of society. It is thy duty, therefore, to be a friend to mankind, as it is thy interest that man should be friendly to thee. As the rose breathes sweetness from his own nature, so the heart of a benevolent man produceth good works. He enjoyeth the ease and tranquility of his own breast, and rejoiceth in the happiness and prosperity of his neighbor. He opens not his ear unto slander. The faults of the failings of men give a pain to his heart. His desire is to do good, and he researcheth out the occasions thereof in removing the oppression of another. He relieveth himself. From the largeness of his mind, he comprehendeth in his wishes the happiness of all men, and from the generosity of his heart, he endeavoreth to promote it. So again, going back to what it was saying here. We must therefore be true to the humanitarian cause of the nation, of the movement. We have to be about liberating our people, because as we can see, their conditions are such that they're not liberated right now. Our people are always in a defensive, back against the wall. They can't do anything unless they have somebody over here that's going to do something for them. When it's the time now for the people to start doing for themselves, which again is going back to the idea of, well, if we could agree that we're a nation and all these different individuals that have these different roles within the nation are accessible, then the people should be able to sort this stuff out. All you gotta do is just go to your brother right over there. We know Moors in different jurisdictions that have dealt with different issues that we can say, okay, well, these Moors over here, they filed suits before. If you need to sue somebody, these Moors over here, they did, whatever activity. Go talk to them. And then when you go talk to them, they're dealing with you on the same principles that whoever sent you to them, right? And again, the idea of the social duties and the humanitarianism is it's you can't come in with the mindset that you're doing this to get something out of it. You're doing this because it's the right thing to do. You're taking part in the process of bringing the nation back, because we know that the nation is in a situation. And the only way that it's going to get back to where it's supposed to be is if the people themselves realize that that's what it is, and then they start acting accordingly so that we can have that, right? Right. So like for example, with us being here, right? This is not a Moorish spot like that. There's a Moor who we know has access to the space, and there's a lack of this type of thing in the area where he's at. So he has something here where the Moors are here for that. Last week or a few weeks ago, we were in Hamilton. Same thing. A Moor who's there, it wasn't his spot, but he had access to a spot, and he brought the humanitarian cause to where he's at. And then whoever received the message. Who didn't, they didn't. And then we keep it moving, because this is just what has to be done. Bringing our people up to speed to where it is they're supposed to be. Because there's been such a plan in place to get us to be in this position that it's gonna take some work to get out of it. Right? It's not gonna be, oh, we hire a lawyer, so we got out of it. Or we got some papers, or we got out of it, or we came together for one meeting and then we got out of it. It's going to be repetitious, constant activity that is going to force the people to change and create the change that the people want to see for themselves. Right? We know that there's Moors that have issues in dealing with whatever it is that they're dealing with. Nothing is a cakewalk, because the people that we're dealing with, they're criminals, and they do whatever it is that they want to do to make sure that you don't get the opportunity to exercise the rights. They'll put everything in place to make sure that these melanated people, they stay on the bottom. Now, you made the reference yesterday that when whatever happened in Syria, there was Syrian people, they came here, they got jackets from the airport. They got homeless people here right now that they don't do anything for. They got people from Ukraine coming here getting whatever it is they're getting. They just talked about they got some 500 million or whatever like that to help Ukraine do whatever. And they got people here right now that they could be distributing that 500 million to them, to help them, and they're not doing it. Which goes back to that thing with magistrate and subject, that as soon as you realize that these individuals that are claiming these power positions really aren't doing their job, it's time to stop dealing with these people and then turning what you're doing inward. And this is part of what it is that we're doing. But the people are so dispersed, the people are so in a state of incompetency that just convincing them that they're not Negro black colored is a job, right? And this is not something that is some far-fetched thing to prove to them. You just go look in the mirror, tell me that you're black. If you look in the mirror and then you still think that you're black, these people did a good job on our people. They did a great job on our people. If their role models are entertainers and athletes only, and then you talk to every other race and they're talking about all these different things that are inspiring them, and then our people from 0 to 99, it's either some entertainer or some athlete is who's their inspiration or whatever. We got issues as a people. And again, the only way that it's going to be fixed is when the people realize that you got Stockholm syndrome, you're identifying with your captor a little too much, and it's time to relieve some hold that you have on these individuals who have never done anything to assist us, only harm us. And you know, the blinded mentality that the people have of not acknowledging the fact that there's a problem and that we've already gone to all these different outlets to try to solve the problem. When are we going to start turning within to solve the problem? This is what here's for. This is what you're here for. Realizing that something's up, and this is where we haven't been yet. We haven't been anywhere else yet. We tried everything else. Tried religions. We tried courts. We tried, individuals. We tried everything except ourselves. And this is where it's at right now. That we have to look within, and looking within starts with recognizing that we haven't had a nationality. Let's get one. And then once we get one, how can we bring ourselves together so that we can form something that is going to be able to allow us to pursue whatever it is that we can pursue without being encumbered. Because we can do whatever it is that we want. Like we say, the more he's connected to a spot, it's a possibility. The possibility is there that we can have the things that we need necessary, right? Are we willing to sacrifice to get those things? Are we willing to put everything on the line so that we can get those things? And once we start doing that, we'll be able to see the benefit of what Noble Drew Ali presented in the 1920s. In the 20s, we had our own manufacturing companies and all that. In the 20s, you made sure that you had a trade back then. You were doing something relative to fending for yourself and your family, your heirs, right? Any comments or questions? Comments, questions? Nothing. Important note: nationality is free, for it is a divine and unalienable right. You are who your forefathers were without doubt or contradiction. It is, however, vital to the interests of all Moorish Americans to work for unity and to support their government. The function of government is to the service and preservation of the rights, liberties, and property of the people. All Moorish Americans must be sincere in acts of good government and to that which is fair and right. They must have the same desire for the uplifting of the ignorant among us as for the improvement of the wise. Be true to this great humanitarian cause and purpose, as it serves for the benefit of others, as we would have it serve justly for ourselves. So that goes back to the theme that you're only going to get out what you put in. I know Noble Drew Ali made reference to, if you're not putting in, how could you expect to get something out? If you're not doing your part to uplift a fallen people, right? how could you expect the fallen people to rise if you're not doing anything to uplift them? References for correcting concepts and understanding administrative functions. The Moors of North America are the heirs apparent to a vast estate. Many of them, however, are unconscious of their territorial jurisdiction and of the basic rules of government. Unfortunately, they have been, however, held to forced servitude and mental slavery for so many generations that they have lost knowledge of self and of government structure. The Prophet Noble Drew Ali brought back to their consciousness their nationality and their birthrights. To help in bringing remedy, he also restored many points of reference once removed by European exploiters and inquisitionists, and by some corruptors among our own. And so, we will address some vital reference points to aid in helping the great missionary work of uplifting the Moorish nation and humanity at large. To reference is the act of referring to a subject matter, a person, or a thing, and means to direct or to send to for information, to assign to or to attribute to a source, or to refer to a cause. Prophet Noble Drew Ali instructed the Moorish Americans to study themselves. He also said, "Go back to the state of mind of your ancient forefathers. These documents, information, or statements will prepare the thinking person to recognize certain needs for adjustment when one goes back to that state of mind of our ancient ones. The way we see things now will definitely be changed, and sometimes conflict with many ancient facts and truths that we will forever find or uncover. The spirit of the nature, the knowledge and thoughts and actions of the true seeker will differ, since the reference points based on truths will ultimately change our actions." So when we're talking, when we're going through the paperwork, and we're talking about the different titles that they had: right to travel, correcting your status, diplomatic, whatever, all these different things are reference points. That's not a title for a document. That's a reference point of study, because what we did, why we stopped using those papers, was, like we were saying, the paperwork was 20 something pages or something like that, right? If you're going to be making copies of these and you have to send them out or whatever, most of the registered mail was by weight. The more heavy it is, the more it's going to be, regardless of the standard cost of registered mail. So because it was by weight, made it lighter, so that now you have to deal with the standard cost. But if you were to take those and photocopy those, you're looking at probably because it's 11 something for registered mail, so you're looking at probably 20, and that was back then, that it was 20 to send more than whatever it was, 20 pages or whatever the case is, right? So those titles that you see in there are reference points. So what we would tell people to do is that we would print that out as a guide for them to use to do some studying on, right? When you look at the papers that said judicial proclamation and name correction, that we know Moors who, they took that document and they studied that for 5 years before they put their signature on. That's how they took that reference point of, well, this paperwork is what I'm going to use to get out of whatever situation. This paperwork is what I'm going to use to proclaim my nationality. This paperwork is what I'm going to use for whatever situation that comes up. But before I actually put my name on this and fill this out or whatever like that, let me go through it 1 time, 5 times, 20 times, 15 times. Let me sleep on it. Let me, before I send this paperwork out, let me sage it. Let me put this paperwork on the altar and put crystals around it and let it stay there for 7 days before I do something with it. Let me pass this paperwork on to somebody else. Let them put their energy on it by reading it. All these little things that the individual could do to boost up the power of what it is that we're claiming that we have. Because again, we use the term when we're talking about ones who are in government now. We use the term of colonists. We use the term of magi or magicians. We use the term of warlocks and whatever, because it's really a highly spiritual thing when you're talking about we want to proclaim our nationality. But the mindset of people is just get a card and get a paper and then that's it. And once I do that, then I don't have to do anything else. When that's supposed to be flipped around. That should be the last thing that you do, sign those papers. Because it's really about having the knowledge of it. And the only way that you're going to have the knowledge of it is taking those things as a reference point. Even, for example, the nationality card. There's Moors who when they got their nationality card, they studied their nationality card before they even carry it around on them. Do the same thing with it. Put it on the altar, sage it, put a certain frequency on this card that they're going to be using as their identification, just so that they're not just picking it up and using it. Because there has to be some type of process that it goes through. You can't just be like, when you look at, for example, shoes, you're not just going to go buy them and then you just put them on and then that's it. You're going to have to wear them out a little bit. They're going to have to mold to your foot. You know what I mean? It's going to be new. It's going to be stiff first. It's got to get worked in. It's the same thing with papers, the cards, whatever else. Another reference is Moors with fezzes, right? Moors get their fez for the first time. And then they're opening the box slow and all that stuff. And they pull it out the bag and then they put it on for the first time. Go in the mirror with it. Certain things that you're going to do because it's ritualistic. The spiritual nature behind it is so high that the divine is going to jump out of you and have you do stuff that you don't even know what you're doing because of the spiritual energy behind it, right? The spirit of the nature, the knowledge, the thoughts, and the actions of the true seeker will differ, since the reference points based on truths will ultimately change our actions. These adjustments away from mental servitude may be uncomfortable for some people because they will not come to realize that they will be forced to make changes in their concepts and associations, as well as finding themselves discarding many unfounded beliefs. Different people will respond differently to this inevitable fact. However, the evolutionary datum of experience remains that acquired knowledge commands a change in thinking. As an example, let us speak briefly on the ancient ones from the perspective of Moorish eyes, as opposed to European colonial reconstructed history. The ancient Moabites are the founders of civilization. Civilization brings about refinement and culture. Therefore, and to their credit, it follows that civilization is a state of human society which is characterized by a high level of intellectual, social, and cultural development, with philology playing a cornerstone position in its social orders. Such developments and refinements are reflected in the lives of the natural people and in the communities or countries that have reached that stage of refinement, morals, and taste. References to ancient world history is important because it gives more refinement and focus on the scholar or neophyte in such ways and manners as establishing mental footnotes and additional information given credence to the subject matters at hand, and so, as reinforcement for the minimal concepts given herein, the reader will find direct supports and influences for this administrative functions booklet. References to ancient world history is important because it gives more refinement and focus to the scholar or neophyte in such ways and manners as establishing mental footnotes. When we're going through your papers and they had they make reference to different aspects of law. They talked about United States Constitution. They talked about UN declarations. They talked about Moorish Zodiac Constitution. But then they talk about Canadian Charter of Rights, which is absolutely counteractive and contradictory to those documents dealing with rights, right? Because the concept of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, when you go through the actual document of the Constitution Act, that only applies to members of Parliament. Doesn't even apply to the common people. So for them to put you have certain rights, but then they're using a document that doesn't apply to you, again, this disqualifies the document, because the document before they added those stuff in was perfect, because Moore's been using it for the past 30 years. There's nothing to even change on it. There's nothing to edit. There's nothing that you're going to make up some different letterhead and then put your stuff on it and make some new thing. It is what it is, because it's already been used. It's already been put in practice. And again, going back to the immoral side of it, that these people know this. The people who are out there that are doing this thing of selling packages and selling paperwork and stuff like that, they know that there was a foundation, and then they took little aspects of the foundation and created something new over here, and then now they're presenting this as this is the all and be all in order for you to whatever. We were talking with a sister the other day about the Moorish American travel document people, right? That they have a Moorish, they have a quote unquote Moorish document, but the Moorish document that they have looks like a passport, and then people are using it, and they're in admiration of it because it works. Well, passports work. Ain't no big deal. You take a China one, you take one from any country that you know. If it's a passport, you show it like that, they're gonna look at it. If it looks legit, you get to go through. When they show all the espionage movies, guy goes in the safe and then he has 50 passports in there, and all of them work. Because passports work. Because the concept of passport comes from the colonizer. So once they see it, they're gonna go with it. Now, show a nationality card and go somewhere is a whole different thing. Show that. Show some papers and do something. That's a whole different arena as far as you presenting something, right? So when we say return to the mind of our ancient foremothers and forefathers, there's people who already did that, who already returned to the mind. Noble Drew Ali returned to the mind and then retrieved all this stuff for us. When he returned to the mind of the foremothers and forefathers, he came this. CMB returned to the foremothers mindset and then brought us Clock of Destiny, book 1 and 2, Circle of Life, whatever. Prince Uriel Bey went back to the mind of the foremothers and wrote books in Latin for Moors. Hakeem Bey went back to the foremost forefathers, and we started retrieving all this information from the Moorish paradigm that was lost, that we wouldn't have access to if it wasn't for Moorish paradigm. Empress Verdiasi of the Washita went back to the foremothers and forefathers of her own bloodline and retrieved the suit with Henry Turner versus United States, where some Moors sued the United States because they stole their land, and then they won 68,000 acres. And that's on the record that they won. And the 60,000 acres goes all the way up into this jurisdiction too. Right? And all of that, all it has to do is the individuals making that claim based on what was already done before. Right? Another one I was thinking about was Dr. Sebi. Returned to the forefathers mindset, cured cancer, AIDS, with all the other stuff, and went to these people's court and beat them with his own testimonials. He brought his own 70 people that he cured in court to prove to them that, yeah, I can cure cancer and I can cure AIDS and whatever else. Right? Yes, brother.
I have some question.
Yeah.
So is it the ethics that you want to establish a code with the Moorish people, or is it that the Moorish code is like just descended on the people? Like, what's the right way of looking at it? Like all other groups, tribal, I don't want to bring a specific name, but all other groups, do they extend as a part of the Moorish code, or is it that the Moorish code extends to them and then you're trying to develop that continuum?
Just for a qualification, when you say Moorish code, what do
I don't
you?
even know the right terminology.
Yeah,
right? I just
like
know
the-
Moors as a group of people then, rather than just like indigenous.
Indigenous, yeah.
Right, so that group of people, as a concept as a whole, nationality, tribal, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But that ethic is the principle of land, that
Yeah.
ethic is the principle of righteousness,
Right.
So I'm just wondering, like, the way that you're very educated in saying it, but that the way that it falls, is it like an imperialism, like that it falls on people so that people connect to it that way because you're preaching the word, or is it that all groups or is it that groups connect to it and then you bring them as a whole?
Right. So with regard to if we just use the Americas for example, right? The Americas was colonized by modern Europeans, right? Because the Americas was colonized, certain things were implemented that came from the colonists. Individuals who would classify themselves as indigenous people, individuals who would classify themselves as the natives, First Nations, or whatever the case is, right? Majority of them are actually modern Europeans saying that they're indigenous. They're not really the indigenous people. So the world has been looking at it like that now. That, oh, well, those people are the indigenous people, and then the people who look like us, we don't even count. We're a minority, we're black, we're whatever. So our thing is switch the places back. Let the Europeans stop being Canadians and Americans or whatever, because you're not that. You're British, French, German, whatever like that. You be that. The so-called indigenous people, that let them stop being that, because they're really Mongolian. They came over here on the Bering Strait and all that stuff. They're not indigenous to here in the context that they're the first people. They're not the First Nations. And then let the black whatever people get back to.
It's true. The way you're doing it by truth.
Yeah. Because that's the thing that's been lacking. Why everything is out of whack. The truth hasn't been presented.
Because as you're preaching, in the back of my head, all I'm reciting is scripture.
Right.
So I'm studying the Torah.
Yeah.
All it is just like the Torah.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm filtering the rights and the left.
Right, exactly. Right. So for example, like if you're talking Torah and then they say the 12 tribes of Israel, that's really Taurus, Sagittarius, Cancer. It's not the 12 tribes as these group of people. It's really the zodiac. is really the 12 tribes, right? You know, Moses and the golden calf was really the Taurian age being taken out the way. That's why they destroyed the golden calf, to bring in whatever age was next. It wasn't a golden calf and people were worshiping it or whatever like that. It was an era that had come to an end. And he was the one that was bringing in this new era, which is why you would give honors to Moses if you're in that realm.
That's why
Right.
I'm following everything.
Yeah.
Scriptures is going right.
Yeah, right. And again, when you know, that's the beauty of Moorish science, because it's woven into all these different schools of thought. You name the school of thought, it's going to be relative to either Moorish history, either Moorish law, or Moorish mysticism, spirituality, or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? It's going to be in that. So the idea with us is to bring the standard to a certain level, that the people start looking at the truth as the prerequisite, because everything that they've gotten has been contorted, distorted, put out of place. You know, like we made the reference with like we said, the thing with the Canadian and American, right? If the Canadians, if the people in the jurisdiction of Canada are Canadians, then the people in the United States can't be Americans. They should be United Statesians. But if they don't call them United Statesians and then nobody challenges it, then they're going to say that they're Americans and everybody's going to go with that. But then when you really look at it, well, America is a continent and Congolese don't call themselves Africans. People outside of Africa say that those people are Africans. But the people who are there, they go by whatever nation, what country that they're part of. Because people actually don't come from continents. People come from countries. But then the United States isn't a country. And Canada is not a country. And then you could do your research on the founding of those countries, and then you realize that they started as corporations.
I could share something.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. A lot of what's going through my head, the scriptures, right?
Yeah.
So right now, what you said in the present moment is relevant to people because they don't know the truth, or it's relevant to people who have a bit of the truth, but they don't know how to bring it out. You know, how to live it, manifest it.
Right. And again,
Canaanland you know, see what Canada means and what Canaanland means? Goose. Goose means Canaan don't mean the land.
Yeah.
Canaan is the land. Canada is the goose. Called Canadian goose.
Right. Which again puts the people in. Yeah. Right. And then that puts people in the status of being property.
Yeah.
Right. But if you say you're Canadian, you think that means because you're on the land of Canada, that doesn't mean that. Just like say I'm Jamaican, when that really means rum. That doesn't mean the land. Because Jamaica is not the name of that place. Right? So there's all this misinformation that's been spread. And then all we're just taking the fine-tooth comb and we're just brushing out all the knots. Combing out all the knots with their own stuff. Combing out all the knots. Then once we comb out the knots, now we can start looking at from the Moorish perspective. So like when we say again with the thing of the indigenous, who we look at as the foundation for this is Noble Drew Ali, and then he's Cherokee, but then he never ever said that he's Cherokee. It never came up that we are Cherokee people or indigenous and Aboriginal. All he kept saying was that we're Moors. Moorish American. We're Moors. We're Moorish American. We're Moors. We're our ancient foremothers and forefathers in this time. we're them again, but we're them with a lower vibration. So it doesn't really appear that we're them, but we're actually
Where
them.
were you when I was younger? All I do is seek the truth now and try and put the fez on after.
Yeah.
I didn't want no one to know that, you know?
Yeah,
It doesn't matter if my background's
yeah,
West Indian.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? There's differences. Not saying that there's a big difference between Indians and
Right, yeah,
But
yeah.
the point is, I'm not
Yeah.
coming home with a big dreadlock on my head and a blunt in front
Yeah.
of my dad and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I'm saying? So
yeah.
I just seek the truth first.
Yeah.
And then I run into people like
Yeah,
you now,
yeah,
and I'm just like,
yeah.
I just want to put the attire and everything on.
Yeah, and again, that's your, we had we used to look at back in the day when the brothers throw a T-shirt on their head. That was them. That was their genetic memory bank that they didn't know. That was the turban that they had on. They didn't really know. When these guys said, we're gonna wear the big shirts, 5X shirts and all that stuff. That's Islamic attire, really and truly. That's Hebrew attire. That's not a big shirt style or whatever like that. It was their genetic memory bank tapping them in, but they don't even, they're absent-minded of it. So, these more.
I was gonna say the NBA had this type of band you can tie at one point.
Yeah.
Land it quick.
Yep.
The actual imagery is on the flags. Right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
France and different
Yep.
places, so.
Yeah. The Corsica bandana. Yeah.
Also in there, even in the prisons, you're not allowed to wear, like, you're not allowed to have a T-shirt after that either, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. But then if you can't do that, but then if you go to the chaplain and say, I'm
yeah, that's what's an
no, whatever.
You know who you are.
Yeah.
Allow you to wear the turban.
They let you
You
wear.
can't just be anybody wrapping your head like a turban.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, it's a lot, but right. This is the quote right here. The half has not been told. If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. That's one of the quotes of Noble Ali. That there's so much fixing that has to be done, that we have to do it in these little portions. A little bit here, a little bit there, because if we just dump the whole thing on you, people are just gonna go right back to their mental slavery.
And it's just like I just showed you the book. You read it, I never tell you. I never told you. It's kind of
Yeah.
Like I said, you're a good leader.
Yeah.
When you're reading biblical references, it's very far gone.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate this.
But again, too, the thing with that was the point of us, retaining the scriptures, right? The being able to retain the scriptures, even though that was brainwash, because it's not really, it's distorted forms of the original, right? There's things in there, there's little keys in there that they're gonna stick in the lock. All you need to do is just, what I mean? And as you get reference points, you open up something. You get reference points, you open up something. And then you realize that, well, hold on a second. So if I can say, read the Torah, and then it has this certain frequency in it, and then you read the Bible, and then it's not the same thing that it's saying, but there's certain things that you can pull out, and then you read the Islamic stuff, Quran or whatever, and they say, well, hold on a second. This is
Well, I'm jealous of you.
Yeah.
Where were you before?
where was I before? Where was I for myself? Because that's the same thing.
Yeah. That's the sign,
Yeah. Right. Again, back to the administrative functions. Honesty and credibility are important for a traditionally misused and misguided people to gain trust and faith in government. Particular emphasis way placed on the temple administrators in their business practices, public relations, communications, and public operations. These governance principles may also be applied to other institutions and organizations. Multiple references, while being sound and authoritative, are not, however, presented as to the limit of one's references. There is more at your disposal. These are nevertheless highly credible for anyone to use to resolve organized controversies or to initiate social, economical, legal, lawful, or resolution-oriented actions in their associations or in making fair and correct decisions. Remember that there are numerous statements, important proclamations, insightful instructions, and directives made by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. So again, with regard to the situation, as the leadership, the ones who have the knowledge and the reference points, it should be them that you should be able to call up and say, yo, I got whatever coming on, the date of whatever. How am I going to go about doing this? And say, yeah, come on down to the office, and then, they sit down with you and they break down to you everything that needs to be broken down so that you can be functional with what it is that you have. What they want is people to rely on them. But if the people stop relying on them and rely on themselves, then you realize you don't need them. All you have to do is just go study and you figure stuff out on your own. And again, the idea of giving you the reference points so that, like what Noir did, gave him the book, let him read it. Because you reading it is going to be totally different than somebody just telling you what it is. When you see it for yourself, now you can't deny it. Somebody said it, you could play around with, well, nah, I don't know, maybe, or whatever like that. You read it for yourself, it's totally different. Right? Editorial comment. With regard to the half has not been told, if I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. This foregoing statement from the Prophet Noble Drew Ali clearly indicates that the Moors need to study open-mindedly and under the present condition stand in what to be actively seeking knowledge. The statement also indicates a promotion of practical thinking, absent of bias or clubisms. Knowledge restriction, naivety, and tunnel vision attitudes have no place in the statement made by Prophet Noble Drew Ali. It discloses that many areas of knowledge and disciplines are needed to raise the consciousness of the Moorish Americans and are not to be limited to that tailored body of knowledge dispensed through the Moorish holy temples of science and the Moorish science temples of America. The Prophet's position on the acquisition of knowledge is based on principles and not on biases. Truth stands on its own merit. Clearly, the Prophet is encouraging Moors to expand their mental and social horizons, preparing them to do better, preparing them to do greater things, and encouraging us, to be more broad-minded and universal in their thoughts and social political concepts and developments. Another important and unbiased statement made by the Prophet is the following: I am a universal prophet, and my philosophy will be universal. I came to you, Moors, because you needed me the most. Editorial comment. This statement clearly indicates that the Prophet is reminding the arrogant, self-righteous, and biased Moors among us that he is not owned by them, nor by the extended family of the Moors. He was unequivocally not swayed by the potential egoisms displayed by some administrators holding positions of authority in some of the temples. He let it be known without contradiction that he is a universal prophet for humanity at large. This does not and did not, however, reduce nor sway his love for his people, nor shake his dedication to his people. He clearly stands on divine governmental principles and justice, first and foremost. Conclusively, divine and applied principles are at the heart of his mission. Impartiality and character. Building is molded into the moral and ethical direction and should be emphasized by Moors with clear conceptions and adept demonstrations. So Juali being universal means that his message is universal. So because his message is universal, then that means that there's no he belongs just to us only, or his lessons belong to us only, because he has literature where he's talking about warning to the nations, not warning to the Moors, or warning to the temple members, or warning to the people, or to individuals who have fezzes on or turbans on. It was for humanity as a whole, because humanity had fallen, but he was among us because we had fallen the furthest amongst everybody else that fell, because their fall, they fell, but they got themselves back up. The example we like to use is Nippon, Japan, that they got bomb dropped on them, and look where they're at right now, right? All we did was get some little slavery stuff, and we can't get out of that stuff yet. These people got nuked, and they fought themselves back to be somewhere where, at least people go there for vacation or something like that if they want to. It didn't stay as it was, right? They rebuilt their society. How they do that? Because they have national standards. They're not gonna play around being somebody's ward. They're not gonna be a serf. They know that it's a sin to dishonor your foremothers and forefathers. It's a sin to do that. Why would they go sinning knowing that there's gonna be karmic debt? There's gonna be some type of karmic response that they're gonna have to deal with for violating their foremothers and forefathers' principles that were given to them. Same thing with the people of the Philippines, that they say we're moral, we're not Filipino, we're not property of King Philip. He's not our master. We're our own masters, and they fight tooth and nail so that they're looked at and respected from the perspective of they honor their foremothers and forefathers. You're not coming in there and playing any games with them, especially people who are foreigners. But then you look at over here where people that were foreign came here, stole land, murdered people or whatever like that, and then those people are still here. You go check all these other places, change name, change place names and all that stuff, change the names of the people and all that, and people didn't say a word. Matter of fact, they went with it. They said, well, you know what? You could capitalize the B and we'll be all right as black people, and capitalize the N and we could be Negroes still and get rights or whatever. You have Negro History Week and all that stuff, when that's not where it's at. There has to be like I was saying earlier, there has to be a change in the thinking of the people. That's the only way you're going to get out of it. And just giving them something and saying, okay, here it is, isn't going to do it. There has to be, the same way they use repetition to brainwash us, we have to use repetition to get out the brainwash, or we're not going to get out of it, which is why we haven't gotten out of it. Right? The prophet strongly expressed his desire for the Moors of North America to know not only the truth, but also the divine truth. This may appear to sound redundant to some Moors, yet it is not. Clearly, there is more to this statement than what appears to meet the eye, or on the surface of it. This is definitely forwarded by him to impress upon us a veiled or hidden truth. Study the distinctions intended with the prophet addressing truth and divine truth in the same sentence, and take nothing for granted. These and other potent reference points would be presented in the booklet. And then they give reference of all the different reference points, writings by Noble Drew Ali, different chapters in the Quran, so that when the Moors get with these administrators, and the administrators are imparting the knowledge to them, that they can go to their own stuff and see the reference points that are being made. So one of the things you would see with people in the Moorish movement is an emphasis on not saying that we're black, an emphasis on addressing ourselves from a national perspective, not from some slave name, right? Making sure that we're not calling ourselves what the colonizer called us, calling ourselves what our ancient foremothers called themselves. And in doing that, then we invoke their energy to be able to do something with what it is that we have that Drew Ali presented to us, right? One of the things that he made reference to as well is that we honor all true and divine prophets. And there's a Buddhism book. There's a Buddhism book that deals with some of the teachings in that realm. And again, as we read this, you're going to have some more things that are going to pop up that are going to make clear to you that all the different schools of thought, religions, or whatever, are actually one thing. And they've been separated from the people. They've been presented as these ones and these ones and these ones, when it's all one thing, right? It's one. It's all different. It's all different styles of patterns or whatever like that, but it's one picture. It's one canvas. And they just cut a corner out and then say, okay, that one is in. They cut another corner out and say that's something different. But until you put the pieces together, then you're not going to get the full puzzle, right? So this is with regard to the eightfold path. Through self-discipline to the abolition of suffering. This, O monks, is the sacred truth concerning the path to the abolition of suffering. This is the sacred eightfold path, consisting of right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration in the self. 8 steps lead to the dissolution of the desire for life. According to contemporary opinions, these steps should not be accomplished in the order originally described by the Buddha. They should be divided into groups of ascending steps, with the higher steps encompassing the goals of the lower ones. One must start with a fundamental recognition or insight in order to carry out right speech, action, and livelihood successfully. When these have been perfected, understanding has also grown. Thus, one may pass from the ethical elements to the elements of inner composure, to effort, mindfulness, and concentration. These, in turn, are prerequisites for the elements of knowledge, that is, for the right thought or the cast of mind, and the highest gain for the perfection of right understanding. Each of the steps has 2 levels. One points the way for lay believers in such actions as giving alms to attain merit in this world, while the second is directed toward monks. For lay believers, right understanding signifies the elementary sight that it is necessary to distinguish in terms of karma between what is malevolent and what beneficial. Evil acts that are not productive in terms of personal liberation, are the killing of living things, appropriation of others' property, forbidden sexual relations, lying, maligning others, crude language, empty talk, greed, malice, and wishing harm to others. In all of these reside the fundamental evils, desire, hatred, and blindness, the cause of suffering. Renunciation of the malevolent is therefore beneficial for the karma. So our literature, the Moorish literature, makes reference to there being higher self and a lower self. And the higher self is the mother of virtues, and the lower self breeds everything that harms. So when they're talking about um, evil acts, acts that are not productive in terms of personal liberation, they're talking about being in the lower self. Once you're in the lower self, then you're gonna get these things. We're before we came up here, we were watching this documentary that they have on what's the thing called again? Beyond Meat. This documentary on Beyond Meat or whatever. So the meat people made a documentary dissing the Beyond Meat, talking about how it's not real meat and whatever the case is, putting it out there as far as the meat eaters. And one of the themes that they were talking about is that once you start getting into Beyond Meat, you're dealing with the presentation of artificial meat as if it's real meat. So why not just eat real meat? When they say the Beyond Meat, we're not talking about vegetarianism or whatever. We're talking about this thing with fast food spots selling plant-based meat and whatever the case is, right? And was bringing that up with regard to the thing of the evil acts, with them saying about, well, you shouldn't kill the animals, you couldn't do all these things, but then you could kill plants though, as if plants aren't living beings in that context. Everybody has their pigfoot chitterling eating grandma who be 99 years old or whatever, and the healthy guy, whatever like that, he just had a heart attack yesterday. You know what I mean? So there has to be a balance. There has to be some type of balance. You can't go extreme. When you go extreme, there's going to be some type of middle ground, and then that's where it's going into the middle path, or in Buddhism, walking the straight and narrow. That it's so narrow that you're probably gonna go over here a little bit.
So like meditation and fasting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like so when you going back to the thing with extremes, there's the individuals say, well, we don't even need food, we could just fast. Well, yeah, you can, but you're gonna be on a mountain somewhere, and it's just you. When society is based on communication and meeting people and hi, how you doing, hugging, seeing smiles and all that stuff, there has to be some type of balance. The documentary before that was about this organization in Chicago. They saw some discrepancies in certain things. They said, okay, we're gonna step up and we're gonna take young people to see different places, and we're gonna give them a better experience than we got because we grew up poor and all this stuff. Right? And the end of the thing, guy lost his wife, lost his house, lost his everything, because he put everything into this thing, neglected his own family. He put everything into, I'm going to help that youth out there and that youth out there and that youth down there, and neglected his own wife, which, you're going extreme. You can't go extreme. Once you say you're going to be on the path of righteousness, then it has to be balanced all around, right? This is why Noble Jolly made reference to, husbands, take care of your wives and children. Wives, obey your husband and take care of the household, because you can't not work together. There has to be unification in order for the thing to work. If it's not there, then you're probably gonna set yourself up for failure eventually, right? the understanding on a higher plane, on the level of the monk, means understanding the four noble virtues enumerated by the Buddha in the Sermon of Sarnath. To embark on this second step, one begins with the Buddha's rejection of useless questions and his focus on gaining insight into the truth. It is by these means that the first fetters that subjugate the spirit are removed. These include love of rituals, in more general terms, holding on to habits, skepticism, and egomania. The latter can take the form of delusions about eternity, example, that the self survives death, or about self annihilation, example, that the self is destroyed after death. An increase in knowledge is accompanied by a diminution of sensual desires and of anger, both which further restrain the spirit. Finally, the fetters that bind one to life itself must be renounced, specifically the desire for refined spiritual existence, as well as arrogance, excitement, and ignorance. Such profound liberation, however, can only be attained by the Arat, or worthy one, on the highest step of wisdom, awakening the awakening. Others may attain the level of entering the stream, which is followed by only a few more rebirths, or by just one return to the world, or by which means he will never return to this world, suggesting rebirth into the world of the gods. So they make reference with Noble Ali's murder, assassination, that he did whatever work that he was supposed to do, and it was time for him to go to a different plane to do work there, because his work was done here. Now we made that in reference to ourselves being here, that we have a certain job to do, and once that job's done, then there's no need for this husk anymore, and you go to a higher dimension in order to do higher work that needs to be done there, because there's only so much work that you can get done here. There's only so much work as far as the spiritual work for man to be what man's supposed to be on the earth plane. There's only so much you could do with this shell. If the mind is as infinite as it is, it's actually limited being in the body. If the spirit is as infinite as it is, then it's limited in the body. There's only so much that it could do. There's only so far that it has reached. So the eightfold path, or anything relative to Buddhism, is about the energy of the self being cultivated with the shell. That, like when they were making reference to the desire for refined spiritual existence, and then you bring up the yoga thing or whatever, or you bring up meditation, and then people get in meditation and they're enlightenment, and then they come out of meditation, oh yeah, that was and then they start, you're supposed to be absolutely humble with regard to what you experienced. You doing psychedelics, shrooms or something like that, and you have some enlightening situation, that's for the self. Because more than likely, if the other person is not with you and they're on shrooms too, they think you're a crazy person. You start talking about the stuff you experience on shrooms. They wouldn't be able to relate to what it is that you're really dealing with, right? And the excitement from that oh my gosh, you had eureka moments or whatever like that while you were in the realm of that mindset, is for the being to be better on this earth plane. It's for the being to be given certain things, for self to become more aware, for self to evolve into a higher being. Peace, man. All right. Give thanks, yo. Good to see you, fam. All right. Peace and love, Morris. Islam. Good. right, so dealing with again the eightfold path. Right thought means that all worldly or otherworldly desires are set aside. Goodness is the principle of action, and that harm to other living things is avoided. A monk, a rigorous Buddhist, can only consciously form his character to this end through strict training. But once he attains right thought, no incentive can move him to greed, hatred, or violence. All right, so going back with the thing with people who are opportunists with information, whether it's preacher, rabbi, pastor, imam, whatever, right? If they have the jet and the whatever like that, and the congregation, they got to walk to the tabernacle, there's probably not right thought happening. And the individuals who are going there aren't exercising right thought because they should be seeing this stuff. It should be evident to them that there's a problem here, right? The Moors used to say they want to pass the fez around to get finance. Just pass the fez and have everybody put money in the fez or whatever like that, right? We're like, forget that. That's not what this is about. They left and now they're telling people $5,000 for papers because it was already their intentions were already shown. What they would really do with the power if they had it, right? Right speech, perhaps the least strenuous of the steps, initially means rejecting all forms of lying, even those connected with some kind of necessity or politeness. In addition, it is unacceptable to retell information that results in division or discord, as is gossip. The goal of right speech, rather, is mutual understanding and joy in communal harmony. Swearing and small talk are both to be avoided. All speech should be polite, memorable, measured, well-founded, and meaningful. Only then does it serve higher goals on the eightfold path. For the same reason, casual and useless conversations about rulers, warriors, and heroes should be avoided. Right action lies in not bringing death to other living things, taking nothing that is not given freely, and refraining from unlawful sexual contact. Because of the last injunction, Western critics have often accused Buddhism of a kind of hostility toward the senses. Monks do, in fact, live in complete chastity. Lay believers, on the other hand, are only required to avoid sexual contact with young or dependent partners. In the teachings, dependent means married or engaged and includes prisoners or relatives' wards. Right livelihood pertains to earning a living in a manner that is salutary to the karma, one that does not harm others. The teachings disapprove of trade in living things, in weapons, meat, intoxicating drinks, and poisons. No professions should be chosen in which violence to men or animals is practiced. The same goes for fraud, uncontrolled greed for profit, and attempts to persuade unwilling business partners, extortion. His position toward the enjoyment of intoxicating drugs again demonstrates the sound judgment and insight into human weakness with which the Buddha formulated his rules. He refrains always from pointing the moral finger and focuses instead on the social consequences of such behavior. The conflict that arises from drunkenness, the loss of health, pecuniary difficulties, and so on. So one of the Moors had a situation where they were involved with somebody and they were sort of on and off with the information. They're on it today, tomorrow they're not on it today, tomorrow not. Until they got in the situation and then they call them more to get them out of it. But the situation is based on them not being Moorish. It was based on them doing some Negro stuff or whatever. And they had to get left to hung out to dry because it was already laid out that if you do this, this, and this, and this, this is going to be the consequence. So now that this is the consequence, now you want to get this information and try to use this information to make your situation better or whatever the case is when you weren't even living by this information in the first place, right? So going back to the thing with the right actions and making sure that as we evolve in this, that we're checking ourselves on a regular basis to make sure that we're in line with certain things that were laid down, just to be safe, because you already know that if you go against it, the karmic that you're going to get from it is going to be worse than what you're going to get in the physical, because the karmic stuff is going to last, is going to be more longer lasting than that, right? Right effort involves ridding oneself of bad character traits and increasing the good ones, suppressing evil thoughts and awakening noble ones. Going back to the same thing with the meditation, that the point is to suppress the evil thoughts. Thoughts can be fruitful. All you got to do is suppress the evil thoughts. Once you suppress the evil thoughts, then you're able to have the noble ones take hold. And then once those take hold, then the evil ones aren't even going to be a question anymore, because good begets good, evil begets evil. So once you're living the life by, the principles, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice be in practice in everything that we do, then love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice is going to manifest. Until the society as a whole starts looking at those principles as the guideline to be living, then we're probably going to be going through a lot of the stuff that we don't want to be going through. Because once you put those principles up to anybody, any nation, any creed, any status, nobody has an issue with any of those principles. The only way they have an issue with them is when those principles are against them. It's the only time there's a problem with those principles. And then now you have to ask yourself, well, what am I doing that has, love not being something that's around me all the time? What am I doing that truth is not around me all the time? What am I doing that peace, freedom is not around me all the time? What am I doing that everything that I do, justice is always attacking me? How come justice isn't, in weight for me? How come I'm always receiving justice, but I'm not receiving any of the other form? Because the frequency of where we are is off. And all these things, this is why Noble Drew said we honor all prophets. Because once you go study all of them, you're going to be able to extract whatever noble truths that you can extract from each of them to make life and make situations and relationships and whatever else better, right? I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments. Which one? This is Buddhism, illustrated historical view. Any other questions, comments? Sis, any questions, comments?
As for suppressing the evil thoughts, I don't think that's something that can do or should even I guess the higher the level, the bigger the darkness, it's like the challenge asking.
Yeah.
I would say you don't have like an attachment to the evil thought, you didn't feel it.
Right.
So they're more
Observing or recognizing that it's there, opposed to suppressing it. Yeah, acknowledging that it exists.
giving that energy to suppress it, don't you focus on the negative?
Right. Yeah. Peace. Yeah, just in class right now. Yeah, Sunday. Hit, you hit me back in like 20 minutes. Yeah, all right. Any other comments, questions? Any questions? Yeah, all right. You got anything, Omar? Anything to put out?
Barbecue should be July, around the weekend of July 9th. We'll get the location out to you in the next probably couple weeks to a month.
Yeah. So that's all. Somebody get keyboard there. Keyboards out there. So it's hot time. Any anybody looking for places? We're over at Eglinton and Keele. The Morris Science Temple's over there, and we're there every Sunday, 12 o'clock until 3. 2530 Eglinton West, Eglinton at Keele. I just wanted to get Brother Kiba just to talk on the spot quick fast. Oh yeah. We also we can do it out there, yeah, so we have space. Yeah, we also after all of our events, we usually take a picture, so we're just gonna do that out there on the court when we're done. Anybody wants to be involved with that?
The spiritual essence that you're bringing out or attempting to bring out is definitely the love. Right?
Yeah.
Sorry if I said
Yeah.
But it's not just bringing great food. You're not teaching someone who's right from left, right from wrong. When you're bringing out discernment,
Yeah.
you're bringing out scripture, you're bringing out higher power.
Yeah.
It's like that factor. I admire your ability to do that.
Appreciate it.
Huge task, right?
Yeah.
That takes an empire people perhaps, that takes people listening.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So I admire like the artifacts and I guess the reference to the prophet.
Drew Ali, yeah, Noble Drew Ali.
Because
Yeah.
I'm saying like it's one thing to educate people, make them understand the etiquette and ethics and all those, but once you're talking about the inner and you're actually bringing it to reality, it's like if there was no one to lead them or no references, it's just up in the air.
Yeah.
Right? So at least you're breaking it down.
Yeah. And
That's amazing.
and again, that's the people who taught us. We're just doing what we were taught.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If someone needs to reach out,
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that you're there.
Yeah.
And then if someone needs to reach out and find that inner peace, you're also bringing that there too, and you're not like limiting.
Yeah.
It's not black and white.
Yeah. It's a universal ideal. That's ultimately why it could be like that. Because it applies on all realms. Like we say, there's Moors here could give you examples of, they went wherever with a fez on and people running up to them want to take pictures and all that, just because they recognize something in them. But if they have a baseball hat on or whatever like that, people don't even care about these people. You know what I mean? Oh, you left? Where did you go? You took off?
Well, he didn't want. He said he didn't have anything
Oh,
to
you was
say.
good? Okay, all right, cool.
So, but then I said that we're looking to take our picture up there.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you want to do that, then do the close, and then we're out, right?
All right. So we could we'll just head out there since everybody's out there, get our picture done, and then we'll come back in and close up. Islam.
Oh, yeah.
Peace and love, Morris. Islam.